Well, good day to you. It is April the 14th, and I don't know about you, but I am having a fantastic start to my day because the weather has been absolutely gorgeous here in this part of the country for the last couple days. Put me in a better mood. Hopefully, you're experiencing the same thing yourself, and you are in a better mood than you would be if it was just pouring down rain, icy and cold. So, anyway, but if not, don't worry about it, man. Everything's going to change eventually. And eventually it'll be rainy and cold and dismal here, and it'll be nice and sunny where you're at. So you can't hold on to things for too long, right? Now, if this is your first time ever listening to Search for Signs, my name is Gary Willing, and let me invite you to our channel where we talk about the emergence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. We have, I think now, over 350 videos where we talk about this, but we talk about why are the Masters and the teacher returning now to the everyday world. What does it mean that they're doing so, not only for the whole world, but for you personally? And it really why is it so important that they come back at this time? Now, I do like to talk about the two most important things that we could talk about early on so that everybody can hear it, especially if you're new to this channel. This, I think, is the most important thing that you can take from what we talk about on this channel. But if you look at it from a certain perspective, both of what I'm about to talk about is evidence that humanity is one. So the most important thing really that you could take from this channel is that we are all one people. We're not just the United States and everybody else. I'm from Detroit. People have shirts that say Detroit versus everyone. So it's not Detroit versus everyone. It's the entire, I mean, which I like that shirt, by the way, but it's just, we're all one family. Which is really what the most important thing that you can take from this channel. But there's evidence that we are one. Okay, the first thing is the miracle signs that have been going on. Okay, now you might be aware of this, you might not, but there have been miracles that have been going on for decades. A lot of them have healing qualities. People have been healed from anything from cancer to terminal illnesses like AIDS, diabetes even, and so forth, and drug addiction. But one of the ones that does have healing qualities is the healing waters of Talakoti, Mexico, and northern Germany and India. And you can Google this and see news reports, independent news reports, not what I'm saying. You can see it for yourself, where hundreds of thousands of people a month, go to this tiny little village just north of Mexico City and have been experiencing the miracle healing waters of Talakoti, Mexico. Now, according to my information, eventually there will be close to 800 of these wells all over the world in the coming, in the not so distant future. If you don't want to travel all the way to Mexico to experience the healing waters, I do have a link in the description for Ainsworths Pharmacy, which does potentize the water and put it into a tablet form or cream form, which you can actually experience it yourself. I don't make any money off of it, but it's something that if you're interested in the healing waters of Talakoti, Mexico, you can see it for yourself and experience the healing qualities yourself. The other ones that have healing qualities are like the crosses of light. I saw some that appeared in a church in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was a Southern Baptist church. The preacher was very open and very all-inclusive to other people's religious beliefs, but he does not believe he's passed away now, but he did not believe anything in what I'm about to tell you. So, but he saw the hope of these miracles, and he told me about the thousands of people that claim to be healed from just standing in front of these beautiful holographic crosses in these windows. Amazing stuff. And then there are other miracles like the image of the Madonna on the bank building in Clearwater, Florida. You can see videos of this. People who claim to have been saved by an accident or terminal illness by an angel, for instance, or something like that. The Hindu milk miracle. You can see videos of this that happened 20 some odd years ago in India. And then, of course, there are people who, and those miracles have been happening to every single religious group, right? I don't want to forget to say that. So they're not just happening here in the United States, and they're not just happening to the Christians. There are people who are practicing Islam in the Middle East that are having their own miracles too. They'll chop open fruit and the seeds will spell out Allah or God loves you in Arabic or something like that. So why would these miracles be happening to every single religious group if it wasn't meant that the hope is for all of them and not just for the Christians, for instance? Now, what you also might not know is there are people who are not practicing any type of religious practice that are experiencing their miracles too. One very well known, in fact, they might be the most well known of these miracles, are the UFOs that we see in the skies. And you can see video after video after video on YouTube. You can go to other sites where people put up videos, even official government videos of UFOs flying all in the sky in different direction that they can't explain. What you might not also realize too, because it's been happening more and more, governments around the world are declassifying what they consider to be information of national security about the UFOs. And they're starting to declassify it, saying that there's actually been UFO activity going on in their country for quite some time. And they no longer deem it as a security threat. And I think part of it is because it's becoming more and more accepted that we're seeing this. But it's also evidence that these UFOs and the people that occupy these UFOs are not here to harm us. They're here to help us. And so, and the question that I always ask, and I've asked ever since I heard about UFOs and people claiming to be, that they're here to harm us and so forth. Well, if they're here to take us over, why haven't they already? And nobody can give me a straight answer on that, right? So the reason why they haven't taken us over yet is because they're not here to take us over. They're here to help us, right? So, but in every case, or nearly every case, that when people experience these miracles firsthand, they have been left with a greater sense of hope. The other thing too is, and I noticed this for myself when I saw the crosses of light, the times that I've had my own personal experiences with some of these masters and so forth, but people who know nothing about this information too, I've even gotten it from them when they've experienced this. They always are left with not only hope for the future, but there's this expectancy coming from it. Like, I just don't know. There's something, I just think that either this year is going to be a great year or something incredible is going to happen. And it's on, like on their tip of their tongue. Like they can't even articulate what they're trying to say, but I get it. And you might have experienced this yourself if you've experienced these miracles. But what I think they're expecting to come back, expecting to happen, that they can't articulate, is that the teacher who made a promise to each one of these religious groups is back. Now, each religious group is expecting a teacher to come back in a different way, to look a different way with a different name at a different time and so forth. But perhaps, and I'm just throwing this out there for you to consider, that teacher is the same individual and is already here and did just as he promised in the Bible, came back like a thief in the night in an hour when you least expect it. And the teacher always looks different and always is, does not fulfill the personal expectations that people have on the teacher. He fulfills the promise that he made. There is a difference, right? Doesn't come back to fulfill the expectations of a religious group, but he comes back to fulfill the promise that he made to that religious group, just like he did 2,000 years ago with Jesus, just as he did 2,500 years ago with the Buddha. Now, that hope, that expectancy is, people who of all the religious faiths are having this. And people even of no religious faith are kind of thinking that maybe something's afoot. So I do think that hope for humanity, and even that help for humanity, is for all mankind, not just for the Christians. And I couldn't say it if it was just the Christians having their own miracles and nobody else, right? But everybody's having miracles. Now the other thing too is, and you might not realize this too, is that the problems that are facing humanity are actually evidence that we are one, because the problems that are facing humanity are going to take all of us working together to solve those problems. And that's why I think the lesson that you can take from these videos, but you can also take from what's going on now, the miracles are signs that we are one, and the problems that are facing humanity are signs and evidence that we are one. And there's actually hope within the problems, because the teacher who made a promise to all the religions, like I said, is already back, and he's already speaking on TV. But his solutions to our ever-growing problems are quite simple, but we do have solutions to them. He says it like this: without sharing, there can be no justice. Without justice, there can be no peace. And listen to this part: without peace, there can be no future. Our future depends on whether we create peace or not. You don't have to worry about changing your Christian belief, worry about changing your Muslim belief, become a Christian if you're atheist or whatever. That doesn't matter. But we as a people together have to look at the fact that peace is a necessity. Now, I would say the $64,000 question, but it really is becoming a $64 million question now, right, is How do we create peace? And I do think that the path that the teacher has laid out for humanity is quite simple, but yet the only path to peace. Without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. Without peace, there could be no future. Does sharing really bring about justice and bring about trust amongst the nations? Yes, I can show you historically in the past, in real life, that it has done just that. Right after World War II, the United States, the powers that be, under the inspiration of George C. Marshall, created what's been known as the Marshall Plan, where we gave excesses of what we had freely to Western Europe to help rebuild Western Europe. And over the past 60 years, probably even more than that, 65 years, there's really no evidence anymore of two wars of biblical proportion that really destroyed the continent in all intents and purposes. And Europe's totally rebuilt. Now, not long after they started to rebuild, they started to create excesses and gave back in payment what they initially took. That's the principle of sharing in a nutshell. It's a nation-to-nation thing. It's an international thing. But it was done between a few countries for a very brief amount of time. And I want to leave you with two things. And then, if you don't listen to the rest of the video, this is the most important thing, is it created peace amongst these nations that shared. The United States trust England, trust Germany even, trust France and Spain better than they trust any other nations on the planet. It's easier for us to travel from the United States to those countries than it is to, say, travel to Iran from the United States, right? So there's an evidence of trust and goodwill amongst these nations. Now, imagine after 75 years of this of the principle of sharing stopping with the ending of the Marshall Plan ending, if after 75 years there's peace and trust amongst these nations, imagine what would happen globally. And this is the question I want to leave you. If every nation did this between themselves, if every nation did this, and for the next 75 years it never stopped, what would the world look like that we're living in then? That's what I want to leave you with. So now we're going to get on into the questions. I do like and invite questions. I do encourage comments even. And if the comments are on point and they can add to the discussion, well, then we'll talk about it. If not, I'll either leave them up there or I'll take them down if they're disruptive or whatever like that. But if you have a question, post your question as a comment. You can email me at searchforsigns@mail.com even, and that will get your answer to me. If you're somebody who's not really that interested in posting questions, but you are an inquisitive type and you want to know more, you can Google this information and see that it's true. The Marshall Plan really did happen. These miracles have been happening to every single religious group and people of no particular faith. You can see videos of UFOs. You can see videos of the healing waters of Tlacote, Mexico. You can see videos of that, what happened 20 some odd years ago in India and around the world with the Hindu milk miracle. You can see that what I'm saying is true about these miracles. Right? You can see images of crop patterns, images of weeping icons, the image of the Madonna on the bank building in Clearwater, Florida. You can see this for yourself. I'm not making this stuff up, right? And I'm not claiming to be the only one talking about this. But anyway, you can see that for yourself. And there's also links in the description that you can do some background research on this for yourself. So hopefully you will. Now, and hopefully, by just seeing these images and watching videos and hearing the people talk about these miracles that have experienced it, it gives you a greater sense of hope for the future too. So hopefully. Now, let's see. Where is the first question? It says, I feel bad and sincerely remorseful for a lifetime of disruptive behavior. Does Maitreya have teachings to help with the ending of such behavior and overcoming feelings of guilt for such behavior? Well, it might come as quite a surprise to the person asking this question, but also to you, the listener, that yes, that is one of Maitreya's biggest priorities in the future. His biggest priority now that we have to do first is create peace and inaugurate the principle of sharing is the only way to do that. Then there's priorities like the beautification of our cities, the free interchanges of people, and so forth. But one of his biggest priorities is the removal of guilt and fear. That is a huge problem of mankind that is causing a universal suffering in the world, really. And it's coming from a couple things. It's coming from wrong identification and conditioning, really. But the solution, as with everything that teachers are going to teach us, is very simple. Now, I'll kind of reverse engineer it, and then we'll go back to, and I'll say what the teacher's simple teachings are about it. But really, we all identify with the wrong part of who we think we are. And it's not our fault. It's the way that we've been conditioned from the very cradle by our parents, by society as a whole, commercialized television, our friends, everybody. They're all telling us to identify with who we are as an individual, which is not true. Where there's so much more to who we are, And when we see Maitreya and see these masters and know who they are on TV or in our real lives, it will be a revelation when they tell us, for some of us, right? Some of us maybe not. We've kind of intellectually known this for some time, but for some of us it's going to be a shock, right? You're divine. What? You're a divine creative being. You're not a factory worker. But I've been working in a factory my whole life in dismal conditions for little pay, working long hours, killing myself trying to make ends meet for it. No, there's so much more to you than that. Well, how do I find who I am? You see what I'm saying? That's the way the teacher is going to be interacting with us, or somebody who's so poor and uneducated and forgotten about. The teacher will look at them and say, "You're not forgotten. You add something that nobody else in the world can add to." What is that? Well, let's find it together. It's the divinity within you. And then as that starts to express and manifest, they'll see the creativeness that they had no idea was even there. Right? But it's going to take us not identifying with the wrong part of ourselves. The joy that will come from that. I imagine people running down the street when they crying, when they hear the teacher speak, because they will have such a sense that their life matters now, that they can contribute something, where before they felt like they had nothing to give. The churches have been perpetuating a lie. Unfortunately, the people who are perpetuating it don't realize it. But they're perpetuating a lie that we are not divine, that divinity is only for Jesus and God, and everything else is... There's nothing but divinity in the entire world, and we all share, and the entire cosmos, the entire universe. We all share that divinity. It's just a level of the manifestation of that divinity is really the key, and the difference, and what differentiates us between us and animals, us and the masters themselves. And they'll tell us that. So people perpetuate this fear that when Maitreya's out speaking in public, he's going to exalt himself above Jesus and God. There's no truth to this. I will tell you this right now. I've told you this before, and I'll tell you again. It's never going to happen. Maitreya will never exalt himself above God, Jesus, you, or even the lowest, most uneducated, forgotten about members of humanity. Because he knows the truth, that we are all divine. There is no difference between his divinity and your divinity. He's just manifesting it more than us. But in time, as we learn and emulate and follow the teachings of these masters, even Jesus, we will start to manifest that divinity which has been latent within inside of us, that we've forgotten about. Now, Maitreya says he comes to teach the art of self-realization. We've forgotten about who we really are. And it says it's very simple. It comes from practicing honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. Those are the three things. Very simple. And these really are teachings that are in the Bible, even if you really look hard at it, they're in there too. They're not spelled out that way, but they're in there too. But honesty of mind, let's start with that. And we'll start with what not to do. We're all guilty of this, first of all. So, I mean, I'm not pointing my fingers at them, but if you look at a politician, it's very easy to see dishonesty of mind. They say one thing, think something else, and do something entirely different. And it's easy because most of them are corrupt and shady. You know what I'm saying? But also their lives are under a microscope. We can see what they're doing, and it's been recorded what they've said weeks or years ago, and we can see how they say something different once the political wind shifts a different direction, and and then they deny what they said, even though we see it on TV. You know what I'm saying? And we've already seen it and remembered it, right? It's very easy to see it for them. Much harder to see it for themselves. But we have to be very diligent. We have to look at it moment to moment, and you have to have what you think, what you say, and what you do line up. And none of us are practicing this perfectly, but we'll have good examples of it when we see these masters out known for who they are. I think the closest thing that I've seen in modern times would be somebody like Krishnamurti's videos, where if you know who Krishnamurti was or not, you can look him up on YouTube and hear him and hear his teachings and hear what he says and how he answers the questions that people, when they ask him questions and so forth, and you can really see it for yourself. And he's a good example of it. And then politicians are good examples of what not to do, right? But, you have to be diligent within yourself. Every one of these, honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and especially detachment, you have to be moment to moment looking at it objectively about yourself in order to get it. That's the trick. Most of us are lazy. Most of us don't have the courage to see that about ourselves or something like that. Now, the next thing, sincerity of spirit, Maitreya says, imagine sitting on a beach and you're watching the sun go down. And at that moment, you start to forget about, and you won't recognize it. It's like falling asleep. You don't remember when it really started and when it finished, but you'll notice that you'll be in the moment. And you'll forget about what happened. You'll forget about your regrets. You'll forget about your feelings of guilt. And you're just there. You haven't died. You haven't gone anywhere. But your conditioning, your fears, your regrets, your remorse, your anxiety just disappear. And you stop identifying with it. And you just identify with the moment, which is who it really, and there's this joy that comes in, right? It happens when you serve, right? I mean, you look at somebody like Mother Teresa, who just served as she breathed, right? She forgot all about herself. It was about helping others. You can do this. Everybody can do this. And then it eventually becomes, that sincerity of spirit becomes habitual. And you don't have to go to a beach to see it. It can be amongst your coworkers at work, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever, because it's starting to become habitual, right? The other way to get there too, I think, is the creative process, writing, painting, sculpture, music. When you're creating and you're in the moment, you forget all about time, you forget all about your life and the problems thereof and so forth, and you're just in the moment. That's sincerity of spirit. And then detachment is the hardest because we've been conditioned to not, like I said, from the very beginning of our lives, to identify with that which we're not. The physical body's desires, our memory, thus the guilt and remorse, right? Our fears of the future, we identify with that, our emotions, but even our ideologies. Maitreya says isms are like drugs. Any type of ism, and it doesn't have to end in ism. Isms are basically ideologies and dogma, right? And conditioning like that, right? Republicanism, democratism. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. Even Christianity, which doesn't have ism at the end, is an ism, right? Islam, is an ism. Buddhism, Hinduism. These are all isms. They're like drugs. We forget who we really are when we identify with that. So I'll leave you with this. Rather than psychoanalyzing why are you feeling bad about something that happened 5, 10, 20 years ago that you can't change anymore, or something that you regret not doing or doing, and your life would be totally different had you just done XYZ differently, right? It's better to ask yourself who is experiencing that fear, or who's experiencing that feeling of guilt or remorse or regret. Or who is happy, or who is sad, or who is a Republican, who is a Democrat. If you ever catch yourself saying, well, I am a Christian evangelical Christian, Republican. Ask yourself, who is actually in the evangelical Christian Republican? Is it really you? Or if you're really angry at the time, I'm angry at you. Ask yourself for a second, step back for a second and say, who is really angry at that other person? Is it really you? Well, just the fact, and I'll leave you with this, just the fact that you can see it shows that it's not you. It's kind of like us identifying with our furniture, right? A lot of people identify with their belongings, but some people don't. That's why if somebody steals the smallest little thing from somebody that's identifying with it, well, then it's huge, it's massive, it's this huge drama. And then there's other people that their whole house could collapse and like, whatever, I can go get a new house, right? And as long as I'm not hurt, you know what I mean? And it's the same principle, right? So just ask yourself who is having those experiences, and it'll give you a distance between it. It'll feel less real to you. It'll almost feel transparent, and then eventually, and this is what the master was saying about in an article I read a long time ago, right before you have this kind of expansion of your consciousness or awareness or perception where you start to see things different, those same things that feel so real to you will start to feel, as he put it, stale. And it can create kind of where you're uncomfortable, but that's a part of the process. That's a part of the path. You start to feel like, there's something not right in my life or whatever like this. I used to be happy at this work, or used to be happy with my bank account being what it is, and now it just doesn't seem like it's making me happy. It's because your inner self is telling you that ain't who you are. You know what I'm saying? You're something far greater than that, right? But that's the process that we have to, that's the path. That's the path that each one of these masters have taken to get to where they are, to where they've mastered it perfectly. And they know nothing but joy, nothing but creativity, nothing but service. They've forgotten all about who they are as an individual. They have no personal agenda. If you're a Christian and you're listening to this, the things that you love and admire about Jesus is just those qualities. But Jesus himself said, greater things than this shall you do yourself. This is coming from Jesus. He said this. Why would he say this if it ain't true? Something to think about. So, all right. Now, the next comment is actually a religious comment. It says, and the title of the video is "Ain't No Joke," because it was actually on the 4th of July, or not the 4th of July. What am I saying? It was actually on April Fool's Day, so it ain't no joke. And said the Christ is back. Exactly. This is not scriptural. Jesus said, "Many will come in his name." He also said he will come back, his coming with a sword and not peace. Okay, so this is a total misunderstanding of the scriptures. And I hate to put it like that. It makes me sound like I'm trying to sound like I'm an authority, and I'm not. But this is my channel, so I'll lay it out there. But Jesus said, "Many will come in his name," and that's true. I couldn't agree more. And Jesus said, I come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword. That is true, 100%. But it's different than what you might think. A simple example would be, there are people in England right now, or Hyde Park in England, where there's a huge park in London, that think that they are the Queen of England, or think that when the Queen dies, they will be the king. I'm sure you'll find a handful of people walking or sitting on a park bench that would think that, and have all the evidence in their mind that that's true, right? And they'll tell you, I'm the next King of England. You're like, yeah, right. But actually, Queen Elizabeth is the Queen of England. That doesn't apply to her. You know what I'm saying? That she is the Queen of England, right? Same thing as Prince Charles. He is in line to be the next King of England, right? So if he told you, I am in line to be the King of England, that doesn't apply to him. I mean, it applies to him, not those other. So that statement does not apply to Maitreya, to be honest. There are people who put up videos all over the place on YouTube that claim to be Maitreya, even claim to be the Christ come back. There was somebody that just was commenting on my last few videos that thought that he was the Messiah come back. That Maitreya is not, he is, or she is. I don't know. I'm assuming it's a guy, but you can't assume gender these days. I'm just kidding. But it doesn't apply to him. And then the other thing is, when Jesus said, many will come in my name, okay, another way of looking at that too is there are people who claim to do the will of Jesus and they're not. Just like Jesus used the parable about the two sons and the father. The father told one of the sons, go out in the field and do this work. And the first son said yes, but didn't do it. The other one told the father initially no, but then thought against it and went out and did what the father told him to do. And Jesus was talking to the Pharisees who were claiming to do God's work, but weren't. They were selfish, right? And he looked at him and he goes, who did God's will, the first son or the second son? Do you remember? Do you remember this scriptural parable, right? It goes in line with that, I think, too. Very much so. There are people who claim to be Christians that aren't following the precepts and the teachings of Christ, hands down, right? There are people who perpetuate stuff all the time, and now they have these huge microphones, and they create huge problems for humanity because they are saying they're Christian, and they're not. They might even believe they're Christians and following the precepts and teachings of Christ, but they're really not. And it's very easy for a lot of people to see it, but it's hard for us to see it for ourselves, right? Now, one classic example is the Christian fascism in this country, and the right wing. And I hate to talk about politics, but it's true. It's there. If you don't follow republicanism and the corrupt Republican Party, and the Democrat parties were corrupt too, don't get me wrong. So I'll put that in there too. But if the Democrats aren't saying this, it's the Republicans only that are saying this. If you don't follow me, if you don't vote for Trump, if you don't vote for this Republican candidate, you are not a Christian. I've never once heard Joe Biden or Obama or any of these Democratic candidates use that phrase. But yet, is the Republican Party the Christian party? Are they truly following the precepts of Jesus? It's very easy for those of us who see it that the answer to that question is no. But yet they come in Jesus' name. We're doing Jesus' work. Jesus was a capitalist, right? I've heard people say this to me. They say this to me all the time when I talk about socialism. Oh, socialism is evil. Really, is it? Jesus was a socialist, man. He was against the establishment that was hoarding the money and keeping the people enslaved and in poverty. And he was against it. And he wanted justice for the people. No different than what Maitreya is saying. It's not, right? So, but I've had friends, I've had coworkers, I've had this, oh, Jesus was a capitalist. Really? Where in anywhere in the teachings of the New Testament is Jesus promoting profit over people, right? So I'm just saying, you show me that and I will take down all my videos and where Jesus, all the distortions in the Bible, all the things that were put in there by man and Jesus didn't really say, right? It's still not even in there. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, but show me, and it's not, because Jesus was not about profit over people. He was healing the people for free, but yet the medical community, that's even in this country, it's all about profit. It's not even about the people's health, really. You know what I mean? So you can't say that. So that, that's where I think that's coming from. Now, in terms of, I come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword, it's a gross misunderstanding of that scriptural text to think that is Jesus saying that we should never strive for peace as a people 2,000 years after, he lived. You know what I mean? Jesus was all about peace. He was a man of peace. He was about justice. He was about sharing. It's the same thing, right? That statement, I come not to bring peace, but to bring sword, to set father against son, mother against daughter, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, was not about the fact that there will never be peace on this planet. It was the view of it should be is the energy of the Christ is an energy. It's it's not subjective. It's not partial. It's universal, right? and it's impartial, but it affects everyone. And this is what's going on today. It's the energy of the Christ, which is that sword of cleavage, is making us and bringing out exactly who and what we are. So if you're selfish, you become more selfish. If you're greedy, you become even more greedy. If you're conservative and very fearful for the future, become more conservative and very fearful for the future, and can't see the other side of the field. You know what I mean? And then if you're progressive, you become even more progressive, and you want change to happen even faster, even if it's not safe to do so, right? And if you're selfish, you become even more selfless. And if you're any kind of corruption, that all comes out in you too, and you can't hide it anymore. This is the energy of the Christ at work. Now, this is a temporary thing. It will eventually bring about synthesis amongst all the people, but it's a temporary thing. And that's what Jesus was talking about. And it was very clear to see it in the Bible. Jesus did the exact same thing. The people who were for what he was talking about were starting to really come out, and those people who were against him were really coming out. He did bring that sort of cleavage out even during that time. But now it's happening all over the world to every single one of us. The greedy are becoming more greedy and getting more money. The poor are getting poorer and poorer and poorer and poorer and more subjected and more exploited and more exploited. And it's just getting this huge rift in the world. That's the sort of cleavage. But it doesn't mean anywhere do I think that meant that Jesus was saying that we shouldn't even be striving for peace, y'all. Let's just let it go. Let the horse just ride right off that cliff. No, of course not. We have the time now. We have the time to be able to turn the ship around, to make it right, to live together in peace. We have it. And the principle of sharing is the key, because that shows us, because it's shown us historically that that's true, that can actually bring about peace. So hopefully that helps. You guys take care, and I hope you have a great day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.